Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hope you are able to tune in today. We're talking guide hiring and onboarding. 'Tis the season, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. That is what we're all about. I'm just refreshing my Facebook feed quickly so I can make sure that the video is coming through because we had some funny technical things a couple of weeks ago. So I just want to make sure that it's working, and it looks like it is. So that's very exciting. Awesome. So I hope everyone is well. I hope that you are starting to feel some energy and momentum as the season starts to unfold. I've been speaking with a variety of tour operators, and they're starting to interview. They're starting to get out their gear. Things are definitely starting to move and get ready for summer up here in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's very exciting. Couple of quick housekeeping announcements. Our schedule for 4 p.m. PST Workshop Wednesdays are a go for April. And we have a pretty good lineup of topics. April is basically going to be mostly about team stuff. So today's session is the hiring and onboarding part of that. Next week, I'm going to talk about guide training. It says guide training program in my notes here. So maybe how to create one. So if you have questions about guide training, like what kind of training should you be providing, or how do I make a training plan? Anything related to that, please drop them in the comments below, and I'll make sure I answer them in my session next week. And then week 3, we're going to talk about filling team gaps, maybe with a VA. So this is not so much about guides, but office side of things. I was in a all-women's travel business mastermind group this morning, and someone had commented like, "Oh, I've been hearing a lot about hiring a VA," and because everyone is very busy, bookings seem to be surging off the charts, and they can't keep up, and they need some quick help. So I want to talk about how to fill in some team gaps with remote workers, essentially. So how can you hire a VA, a tech person, a customer service person, website management person to come in and help fill some of the gaps to get you through the season. And then I want to talk on week 4. We're going to kind of shift gears a little bit from team, and we're going to do a session on some SEO basics for adventure businesses. Okay, so hot topic in the online space for sure, and this is something that we have had a lot of inquiries about, and also a lot of confusion about SEO. What is it? How does it work? Why do I need it in my business, right? So we're hoping to just open the conversation around that at the end of the month, so that, you guys could just have a little bit more of a baseline as to the who, what, why, when, where, how stuff on SEO. And then we'll kind of carry on some of the marketing pieces in May, so we can help you guys convert your website visitors to sales. And I want to talk more about the lead to sales conversion through May. And I'm hoping that will provide you guys some ideas or insights on how to get your trips and tours filled up for the summer season. So without further ado, let's talk about guide hiring and onboarding. So we all know that this is the season, well, here in North America and the Northern Hemisphere anyways, where you've put up your job descriptions probably back in February and March, and now you're really getting into that hiring process. So now you're starting to interview people. You're starting to really meet some of those candidates, and then once you decide on who you're going to hire, you need to onboard them into your business. Just a second. I'm fresh off a 3 o'clock coffee, so you know how that is, eh? Need some water in there too. So Just like in the construction industry, right? There's construction season, and then there's just nothing that happens. Again, speaking about North America, where we get winters of 20 below. Um, in adventure tourism, we have seasons too. Everyone already knows this. So if you are coming into your peak season, if your peak season is summer, now you are hiring. So this is the time when tour operators need to hire back a whole fleet of guides, drivers, customer service people, operations people. That can be people who do gear or food. Yeah. Maybe maintenance people if you run a bigger, operation where you have buildings and property to maintain. Um, there's a whole fleet of people who are going to be coming back to work. So it's a really big, busy time of the year for owners and managers to be getting their teams all ready for the summer. So the thing that is challenging, right, about the seasonality of our businesses is that it often creates high turnover. So drop a comment below if you feel like you hire new people every year. And if that's the case, just remember you're not alone, right? This is the case for a lot of folks in the industry. And that is because traditionally guiding, right, was a fun summer job for college and university students, and or it was for the die-hard, sport loving fanatics. Yeah. But we're not in that position anymore. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. And often we just see people not come back because they get a full-time job, maybe in whatever they went to school for, or just somewhere else, and they now are seeking that stability. Okay. So Will pulled up a stat for me here, and it's that 28.6% of hospitality staff turnover every year. It's almost 30% turnover. Yours might be higher, yours might be lower, depends on your business. But the average turnover in our space is still about 20%. So that's quite a lot, right? That's 1 in every 5 guides for sure don't come back. Okay. So sometimes we are left with a little bit, you kind of got to take whatever you can get, or whoever applies, you just kind of need to take them and train them. And that can be really tricky. And especially if you don't have a lot of pre-bookings and you have to also be projecting on what your capacity is going to be for the summer. And that as well can be tricky to do and to manage and to guesstimate, right? Based on past numbers, because the last 2 or 3 years have been kind of a shit show, and that's okay. Hopefully this year you're going to see, a little bit of a rebound. So for what we're seeing in the industry, probably better to have a few extra people around, or people who can come in as casual, or who could do 2 jobs. As an example, my brother is returning to Ontario, and he's been asked to come back to Wilderness Tours, which is a seasonal adventure business. They do raft trips down the Ottawa River, but they're expanding their operation, or shifting their operation. So they're going to be adding mountain bike trails. And they asked my brother, and they said, hey, we want to hire you back to finish building the mountain bike trails, because he's actually a heavy equipment operator, and that's what they need. But they then asked him and said, hey, would you be interested in participating in our guide training program, and maybe fill in on a casual basis? That is a great example of giving both people who are coming back to work the opportunity to learn a new skill, maybe work a day or 2 on the river, right? But then still spend the majority of their time in the role for the job that you're offering them. Okay. This flexibility of having people who can do double duty is a great way also to kind of plug holes and fill gaps depending on capacity. So these bike trails, right, they don't have to be finished this summer, right? They can work on those bike trails September, October, November, basically until the ground freezes or it snows here. And if they have a really busy volume of people coming back rafting, they can pull Taylor into the rafting space, right, and put them down the river so they can make their money now, and he can go back to work on the trails later, and again pick up early in the spring, right? It also gives him an opportunity to expand his season, right? He can start working on trails now in April, right? Guide training doesn't happen until the middle of May, so he gets an extra month of work. And then when he does guide training, now through this peak season, June, July, and August, he's available to be a river guide, right? And when they don't need him, he still has other work to go and do. So I think we're going to see a lot more of those types of creative jobs. And so I'd really encourage you guys to consider how you could have people do double duty, right? Can you have a guide who's a part-time guide and a part-time social media manager? Can you have a guide who's also part-time customer service? Can you bring them into the office and get them to help you close sales? Things like that. So yeah, moving on to hiring. So we are shifting into this position as well. So this is an area that I do help our like monthly clients work on in their business. So we're helping one of our clients hire guides, a marketing person, and an operations manager this summer. So that's 4 to 5 positions that we're trying to fill there. And then we're helping another new client who just came on hire some, farm hands and B&B manager and a few other odds and ends as we go along. So there's definitely, stuff moving, and it's an area that, quite frankly, business owners find very overwhelming. There's lots of law hoop stuff, especially here in Canada. You gotta set up payroll. There's all kinds of information to collect from your new guides, and then there's your new team, and there's lots of information you have to disseminate as well. So that's where having an OBM and someone who's been through this process many times, both on the from the manager side and also from the employee guide side, help you really navigate how to set this all up. So as you all know, guides now come in a variety of personality types and backgrounds and all kinds of stuff. So the pool has really opened up, which is very exciting. But it's really important that you're still screening for these personality traits that are really going to work best for the experience that you're trying to deliver at your business. Okay. So make sure that you're looking for someone who can, really keep up morale, especially if you're doing kind of multi-day trips or, backcountry expeditions. You want somebody who's really upbeat and positive. A lot of guides, look for people who are really good at logistics. All trips, all tours, whether it's a day down the river or a multi-day trip, requires some level of logistical competency. So, perhaps ask them when they apply to provide a trip report to you from a previous trip, or get them to put together a sample itinerary of a trip that's on your website. That forces them to go look at your website and put together the guide version of the itinerary, right? Like, what time would you feed people breakfast? How long does it take to drive from point A to point B? Where will you stop for lunch? Like, all of those types of things, and submit that to you as part of their application. Ideally, your guides are effective under pressure. So you want somebody who can feel confident in a bit of a stressful situation. But we also want them to be a person who's empathetic, right? Who can relate to people when they're having a hard time, and encourage them to keep on going. Something that myself and a client had a conversation about was also, we want to look for people who can step up and be a leader, right? And we want someone who can step up and work. Okay. There's a lot of new guides. I think I've said this before in another video, right? People who are coming into the guide space, maybe they're coming from corporate, or they're coming from some other venue where they had a kind of a 9-to-5 job, and they're now seeing the outdoors as like, I can have my dream job. I can just be a hiking guide and they won't have to do any work. And they don't really realize actually how hard it is just yet. And then they also don't realize things like, they have to work weekends and holidays in tourism. Okay. So that's where having someone who's, kind of that like leader, workhorse personality, who's just fired up, motivated, and like wants to do a really good job and be there. Even if it's over the weekend, they're still going to get a weekend, right? You're still going to give them other days off. They're just not going to be on Saturday and Sunday, right? So finding somebody who's comfortable with that up front is going to be way better than, not bringing it up, not talking about it, and then having somebody asking for weekends off or, certain time off when it's peak season, right? That's not a situation we want to put our stuff in. So hopefully by now you've already created your job posting and you've already had an opportunity to promote it, to give it some, attention on your website, on your social platforms, and if in a few other spaces. So I'm just going to get my screen ready here so that I can show you a couple of examples of places where if you're still looking for people or you haven't been getting a lot of attention to your job ad, or you're not getting a lot of applications, then these are a couple places that I would definitely encourage you to check out. So Basecamp Outdoor Jobs, this is a great spot to post. They also do paid postings because they do this like newsletter thing. I think I can actually bring that over too. I just got the email this afternoon. Allie from Basecamp. Okay, here it is. So if you sign up for the Basecamp, so this is their email. This is their same like Facebook group, same ladies running this. Okay, you can post your jobs here, right? So this is an example, right? Who they're looking for. So they're looking for mechanics in this case to go work in Greenland. That's cool, right? So you can, post your jobs here in this Facebook group for free. You just have to follow their posting guidelines, okay? But if you sign up for their job, their emails, and you can also pay to post your job ads in their emails, this goes out to their entire subscriber list every other week or so. And so it's a great place to really get eyes on your job listing. And you're going to be standing here alongside some of these really awesome companies, like NatHab is hiring a social media manager. Okay. And then this is a great way to also see just, what are other companies paying for these types of roles. And this is a great industry place where I would really encourage you to follow along. Some other options for posting jobs, which I just got brought up to me today, was some of these organizations. You guys, a lot of you will know Paddle Canada. They actually have a job board directly on their site as well, and you can post a paddling job. So this is pretty quick and easy. Just fill in all the boxes and submit it. And then on the job board, this is where you can see all the different kayak jobs that are here. So some of, everything from full season to we just need a person for, for a certain duration or whatever, right? Like this one here is only like a 5-day contract, but other ones are for the full season. So this is a great place to post jobs within the industry as well. I'm going to take that down. Awesome. So that's just a few places to post your job if you're still looking for stuff. Other things are get in touch with the colleges, College of the Rockies, Algonquin College, any college or university that runs an outdoor leadership program or has like a geology students or any of those types of people there. Get in touch with their, I don't remember what these people are called, but there are people who are there who are advising the students on jobs that they can apply for over the summer. Get in touch with those departments and get your listings in there. So once you're starting to get your applications coming in, so my recommendation for taking applications is to actually create like a fillable form for people to fill out. I find that helps you ask it helps you ask more questions up front to screen people in, as opposed to just reading their resume. Okay, so a fillable form is a great way to capture all their information, have them answer some questions, give them some scenario questions in there too, and then allow them to attach their resume to their form. So Google Forms does this really well. You can do a file upload box option there. And basically, then go through, pick the people that you want to interview. And I really recommend that you set up something like Calendly so that you can have an interview link for free. So then you can just send all of your candidates the link to the interview and say, you've made it to the next round. I'd love to have an interview with you. Please book a time that works best for you here. Okay. Again, we're trying to speed up your hiring process and keep you from having to email all of these candidates back and forth to figure out a freaking time to have a meeting. Just create a Calendly link, please, and get them to book a time with you. And then run your interview. So I do recommend that you create a interview template so that you have questions ready to go, and then create a version of that template for every candidate that you're going to interview. And if you, as you're going through the interview, jot down some notes, answer their questions. And if you want to get really fancy, if you do have a paid Zoom account already, you could run a recorded interview. That way, if one person on the team is doing the interview, you can have the interview questions and notes doc to capture some information, and you'll have a recorded video so that you can then go back to your leadership team. So maybe you have maybe the manager's doing the interviews, but the owner wants to just like quickly watch, the interviews, or have a little sneak peek to get a vibe on this person, and you guys want to have a conversation about it. It's a really helpful, tool for having these discussions about hiring. If you can, watch a replay of the interview. Okay. Just be transparent about that though up front and say, if you feel comfortable, I'd really appreciate recording this interview so we can look back on it over all of our candidates. And if somebody doesn't want to be recorded, then that's fine. Don't do that. And you just take better notes on that one. Okay. So once you've decided on your candidates, you have to do a bunch more things, which aren't on my list here. So basically the next thing after your interview is to communicate whether they've been selected or not, of course, right? So create some email templates for that. Email people, say, sorry, you weren't selected for this year. You need a little bit more skill development, or we'd like to see a little bit more experience. If you're able to do that this season, please do apply again next year, or just say, sorry, you're not a good fit. Bye for now. And then the other email is basically, here's your offer of employment. Check it out. Let us know if you have any questions. Here's what the next steps are. Okay. So always present the offer and the information, and then include, if you want to move forward on this, here's what you need to do. Okay. Always tell people in your emails what they need to do next, so it's really clear to everybody what those next steps are. So what are the next steps when you go to hire somebody? Well, you are going to provide them with an employee agreement, perhaps, as their offer. So the first thing they need to do that is, of course, read, review, sign, and return that signed agreement back to you, so that you have that commitment for the season sorted out right away. And then the next thing you're probably going to want to do is also collect, so for guides in particular, copies of certifications are important to have on hand, because that verifies, that they actually have the certification and that it's still valid, meaning their training wasn't a decade ago, and they've used it and been current since. And then the second thing is for your vehicle commercial licensing, you might need a copy of their driver's license. For your insurance, your commercial liability insurance, it's your due diligence to verify that your guide certifications are valid, and keep a copy of that on file in case there's any litigation down the road. You have the client sign waiver, you have the guides, certifications valid, and you have documentation to support your lawsuit. So please put in the effort to collect that stuff. You're going to want to centralize all of these things. So I do recommend you have an HR folder in your Google Drive. Inside of that, you should be keeping another folder called team folders, or team, accounts, or whatever. And then inside your team account, you should have a folder that says Katie Broadhurst. Okay. And inside that folder, that is where you would keep my offer letter of employment, my certifications, maybe some sample copies of my logbook. You would keep my pay stubs. Everything that's related to me working in your business should be in my folder. Okay. That folder should not be shared with anybody else inside the business, unless it's just the person, me in this case, and the manager. Okay. Those are like the two people who could have access to that account. or that folder, sorry. The only other person you might share that with would be like your accountant, so that they can put the pay stubs in there for you, and they can put in the employees or contractors a T4 or other documents that are related to their taxes. Okay, so that's how I'd like to see you guys organize your back end on this one. So now you've got all the like paperwork and the formal stuff done. What's next? Well, you need to like onboard your team into your business. So you want to share things now like your operations manual, your brand guidelines, your risk management plan, your team training program outline, and what their requirements are going to be for that, so that they can start to review some of this documentation. And yes, it's not fun and it's not always the most interesting part of the job, but having your team review like an employee handbook or an operations manual and sign off at the end that they read it is a really good way to also cover your butt as a business owner, so that if they say that they've read the employee handbook and then they misbehave, right? You have a way to go back and say, look, you can't just switch out guides and not do that through me. That was in the employee handbook, right? That you have to come to me, the manager, to get approval and have the discussion about whether you can not guide this trip and if we can give it to somebody else. Okay. So things like that, right? Then you have a way to a mechanism also for, reprimanding people if they, if they show up to work drunk, or they are drinking on trip, right? If that's in the employee handbook that there is no drinking on trip, then you have, again, that place to go back to say, look, you can't be drinking on trip. It was in the employee handbook. You signed off on that. Like that's your one warning that you're going to get, right? And in these types of things where safety is involved, it's like, 2 strikes and you're out. You don't get a third time with stuff like that when it comes to safety. Okay. So make an effort to put together an employee handbook or an operations manual or both, and make sure that things are really clear to people and that they are given time in advance of their position starting to read, review, and sign off that they have indeed read all of those materials that you've provided. Some of those other materials you should be providing are emergency response plans, probably elements of your risk management plan that pertain to them around gear maintenance or vehicle safety checks, things like that. But those are the pieces that should also be involved in their training. So once you've onboarded them, you've got all their personal details, you've provided them with all the company stuff. Now you really need to move into the training. The providing the company stuff, sorry, just to roll back quickly, is also access to any of your business's systems. So if they need to go in to check waivers, make sure they get provided the password or a user account to do that. If they're going to need to pull client rosters from inside a system themselves, please make sure they also have time for that. And if you're using a time tracking tool, Clockify could totally work out in the field. I believe there's an app for that. So they can add the app to their phone. They can create, you would send them an invite as a user from inside the system. They would log in on their phone. You can ask them to track their time on their phone in this app when they show up, and they're being maybe paid per hour for trip prep or something like that. Okay. So then moving into training, this is when you really need to just carve out time to basically review everything they already read in their operations manuals, their employee handbooks, their response plans, gear maintenance, and just really hammer home all of your expectations for them for the season. Okay. Training is one of those things that evolves over time. So if you're doing some guide training and onboarding for the first time, you're going to miss stuff, and that's okay, right? Your guides, if they have experience, are going to ask you questions. They're going to ask for clarification on things. And so you're just going to do your very best. And the way that you can always do your very best is by planning ahead. So do take some time to sit down, and even if it's just, if it's on a piece of paper, it's fine. Just hammer out all the topics that you want to make sure you can cover with your guides through a training plan, and then carve out the time to set that aside and ensure that you're able to cover all of that content and make sure that everyone is really clear on stuff like, maintenance protocols and how to dry things appropriately and then when to go back and put them away. Make sure everyone's clear on where to find things, okay? And don't just blindly show people, like set it up as a scavenger hunt or something, okay? And give everyone a list of things that they would need to get ready for a trip, okay? And run a timer and be like, scavenger hunt is on, right? Whoever can, get all this stuff the fastest gets a free coffee or something, right? Just make it fun. And that's going to also, kind of force people to have to think kind of quickly on their feet. It's going to be kind of a fun game. You're like gamifying, right? Learning where to find things. So, yeah, just get creative and try to build a good atmosphere through your training as well. A lot of training ends up being pretty sterile. And it's just not always as effective as something that's a little bit more involved or fun. They're going to remember it from a positive experience, okay? You can also run it the other way, where you can just dump a bunch of, gear on the floor, right, in like one area, and then ask them, maybe they each have a pile, and they have to, whoever can put away their pile of gear the fastest, again, put a little prize on there that doesn't cost you a whole lot, but it's kind of fun, right? Make sure that while you're going through your training that you really cover your expectations, okay? It can be hard the first couple of seasons to be clear enough about what your expectations are, but let people know as best you can what you are expecting of them, okay? And just what the, I don't want to say backlash, but like what the repercussions of not, meeting these expectations will be, right? If you're late for more than one trip, you're not going to get to guide the good trips. You know what I mean? If you're not able to take care of the gear appropriately, then what, right? Like there's got to be rewards for when people do a good job, but there also has to be consequences when people don't do a good job. Okay. That has worked for pets and children for millennia. And I like to think that it still works for most people. Give them a little incentive. Little incentive can go a long way, both negative and positive. And then another element to the expectation thing is just try to identify some of your personal pet peeves. Okay. If it drives you absolutely crazy that people, don't hang up wetsuits all facing the same direction or something really nitpicky, you can speak it so that they know, right? But then also remember, like, this is something that is totally just me being really perfectionisty. Okay. That's for you to know, but the expectation, right, is that all the wetsuits go this way because then they're easier to put away later or something, right? So just give people that that guidance, okay? And then they'll know what's going to piss you off, right? So then later, if they do that thing, you are in the clear to show up a little bit peeved, right, about why something didn't get done. You're like, we've trained you how to do this. I did tell you this was a pet peeve of mine, so I'm peeved, right? It's pretty simple, and you didn't do it. Why not? Like, what happened? And can we make sure it gets done right and better the next time? While you're doing your guide training, you really need to also have some conversations about customer service. Okay. Some people are awesome at client care out in the field, and some people just aren't. Okay. So it's something that is tricky to teachable, but tricky. Okay. And it's better when your guides show up and they're very personable and customer service just flows smoothly from them. But really make sure that you're clear on how you expect them to treat your customers in a variety of situations. Okay. You also want to cover just policy around, privacy, customer personal information and privacy, their own, limits with personal privacy, if they want their cell phone number shared with clients or not, if they, want their picture on the website, if they, how much of their personal history they should be sharing with clients, things like that, and what those boundaries should sort of be, because guides walk a very fine line with clients around friendship and needing to be that leader. Okay. And I have personally experienced this a few times where, some big dude comes on the trip and he thinks he's just going to be awesome. And he doesn't want to follow my safety protocols at the beginning, right? And so, is a tool of like making fun of this person an effective way to get that reality check out of them or not, right? Do you try to befriend that person first and then be the leader? Or do you just go hard and say, no, like you have to wear your helmet going down the river or you get out of the boat, right? Like we always walk this fine line where we want to be our clients' friends, but we also have to be their safety person. And you need to be clear with your guides where you draw that line, okay? And then you, as the business owner or the manager, you also have to maintain your reality, right? Which is in adventure tourism, the customer is not always right, okay? There is definitely a zone that customers cross where they are wrong and they are being unsafe. And your guides need to know that if or when that customer crosses into that zone, that you're going to back them up, even if the customer is pissed and wants their money back or whatever, and is going to give you terrible reviews and all this stuff. If your guides have made a decision in regards to safety or, kicking a client off a trip because it's just ruining the entire group dynamic because they're drunk every day, your guides need to know that you're going to have their back. Okay. And it's going to be uncomfortable for everybody, but you and your team, right? You need to stay strong and you need to stand together when your customers cross into that zone. So put this on a whiteboard, create a circle inside, like another circle, like a Venn diagram, right? Where like clients who step over this line are now in this zone. And I am giving you my permission to kick them off the trip, kick them out of the boat, tell them they can't keep coming, right? This is going to apply to you guys in regards possibly to COVID this year. So you need to have those expectations also be clear with your clients, right? That no, if you are having COVID symptoms or you test positive prior to joining our trip, you cannot come, right? That is in the no zone. And if your guides experience on the trip, say we're 4 or 5 days into a trip, and a client comes down and is very sick and is having symptoms, you guys need to have some protocols into place to help them make that decision. Like, do we, isolate this client off the trip? Does the whole group now need to isolate? Where and for how many days? And your guide is going to be the one delivering that news possibly to a client that says, no, you're sick and you need to go and stay over here and you need to stay here for 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days, whatever the local quarantine stuff is where you are, until we can get you tested and see if you're positive or negative. And if you're positive, you're going to have to stay off the trip. And they have to deliver that bad news to people. Okay. So they're really going to need your support if they have to make that decision. And you're going to need to be communicating with the client directly as well, because they're going to be upset. They spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this trip and now they're stuck in a hotel and they can't go out, they can't do anything, and they can't join the trip, and they're not getting a refund, right? So you're going to need to coach and support those customers to, work with their insurance company, help them catch up with the trip later if they're able to finish quarantine and rejoin the trip, help them reschedule flights maybe, right? If they're kicked off the trip and have to quarantine and they missed a flight to go home, all that kind of stuff. So definitely work through some of that stuff in regards to COVID and customer service and that no zone, so that your guides have full permission to make a decision when it comes to safety. All right. Let's see. Just going to see if we have any comments coming in. And I think we're a little low on visitors today. So if you're rewatching this or you're catching this replay, please let me know what you think of any of these things down below. I'm always happy to take your questions and, of course, your feedback. Was this helpful to have this conversation around guide hiring and onboarding? Was this a good time to have it? Should I have done this back in March? And a couple of things to wrap up the session today. So I do have an SOP on subcontractor hiring. That's a freebie that we give away. So I'm going to include a link for that in the comments below. And you're welcome to take that, make a copy, and then adapt it to be the steps that you need to take in your business to make sure that all of your team gets brought in the smoothest way possible. And I really can't stress enough that this is something that you need to have a process for in your business, so that it doesn't feel as crazy every season, and or so you can start to delegate it to a manager or someone else with experience on your team to start to help you bring people into the business. All right. On that note, I think we're going to wrap up, but I just want to throw it out there that we are also running an automation workshop next week. So you're going to see some posts about that. And if you guys are curious at all about what automation looks like and how it could help your business, I would love for you to join me. It's a free 3-day workshop. We will be using Keep. So if you're curious about what that looks like, we're going to give you guys access to a 14-day free trial. And then take you through kind of setting that up, really helping you deep dive into the software so you can decide if it is a good fit for your business or not. So without further ado, I will say thank you so much for being here today and watching this replay. And I will see you all again next week. Bye for now.